And it's as if the rains are saying, give me space, I am here to stay. And we almost develop the character of the rains, you know, every day. We keep showing up. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
I am Kelly Egiga, and sometimes I wonder which day is the most productive. Some argue that it's a Monday, some say Tuesday, some say Wednesday. Well, it's the midweek edition of the show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We're live from our global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. Well, the director had to call our attention to the fact that Bukola is wearing Cinderella shoes this morning. So lovely shoes. I was going to talk about your jackets, but the director says it's your shoes for him. So lovely shoes you've got there, Bukola.
Thank you. Lovely susu. Now that you mentioned my shoes. But something that isn't so lovely, especially for Lagos residents, those who live on the island, is the rains. Oh, you should have seen some streets in Lekki. You know, social media journalists are always very dependable at this particular point in time. The streets were completely overtaking, and there were some comments that will make you chuckle. But chuckling amid very difficult circumstances, no, it wasn't funny at all. We wonder how Lekki residents or island residents, you know, on the whole, how they went about commuting yesterday, getting to work and running errands that were important, particularly, you know, as the week was just beginning to, you know, take shape. Tuesday, this raises questions yet again, you know, about the environment, you know, about sustainability efforts of the Lagos state government. Whenever the rains come, it throws up, concerns about how to manage this, and it makes us recall, you know, how you recall, you know, when water used to overrun the bar beach on Victoria Island many years back, until stoppers, you know, were put up by the state government that prevented the rains, you know, from, will we call it the rain now, the rising sea level from overrunning its banks. And questions are being asked about how that can be done, you know, to prevent particularly homes that are built around the water areas in Lekki, particularly, you know, such that, you know, these residents can be saved the trauma of the yearly rain visitor. But more importantly, we must pay attention to the rise in sea level. Just months ago, there were videos that came out, and we've spoken to this just last week on the program about how we see you know, water beneath the Third Mainland Bridge rising beyond comfort levels, very close to the bridge. Some have said, oh, it's normal at this point in time. The capacity of the bridge is strong enough to carry, you know, whatever levels that the sea rises to. But I wonder if we can be comfortable with that professional advisory. What is the position of institutes, of research organizations, the Institute of Oceanography and other relevant agencies, to help us understand what exactly is happening and how, you know, intervention projects can help, you know, stem the tide in the rising sea level and help us manage more sustainably, rains and, you know, waters overrunning its banks as a result of rising sea level and the release of water from dams. We could go on and on, Kelly, but these are real issues.
Well, big concerns indeed for residents of Lagos and those particularly on the island. These are the images that don't look too good at all. It's one thing to battle traffic, but battling traffic with flood, it's also a big concern. I know one or two persons who stay on the island who have had to fix their cars over and over again, not because of any other thing, but because of the damage always caused by flooding on the island, Lekki precisely, because of the nature of the waterway that they have also on the island. I think I hear salty water or something, so it's not also very good for engines and all. So it's a big concern. Are there solutions to this? I think so. On the part of the government, I think we can do more in terms of enforcing some sort of habits, ensuring the gutters, the drainages are always, cleared. on the part of residents, Nigerians too, we also have to develop habits that will also not cause this kind of danger. Because whenever it rains in this part of the world or Nigeria, we see people would always just easily just get to, you know, take their debts and just go and empty it in, you know, in the gutters or, you know, in the flood waters and all of that. So we too have our roles to play. Our leaders have roles to play. Followers also do have roles to play. In terms of rising waters, you're very correct. I know I did a report recently, I think a week ago, around the Sherry community here in Opik, and I could see indeed that the Ogun River, which is very close to where our headquarters is beginning to rise, and those communities there, they're already bracing up for rising water levels, because I mean, they say every time around September and November is when the river gets to overflow and it gets into their houses. Some have even developed mechanisms to cope, such that some have to leave their homes when there's flood, for them to maybe take shelter some other places, relatives and friends, and then they'll have to come back when, you know, when the floods have leveled up and all of that. So, but I think we can handle this. Lagos, I mean, we brag of how metropolitan our city is, how cosmopolitan our city is. We brag about the fact that we have the 5th largest economy in the continent. So I think that's the Lagos State government can indeed do something. I know that the Commissioner for Environment, Shitu Wahab, has been up and about ensuring blocked drainages are cleared and trying to see how we can live a lifestyle of ensuring that, you know, we do not contribute, you know, to our environment, getting this kind of, becoming this kind of problematic concern for all of us. But beyond the environment, Bukola.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
While those on the island were not celebrating, some were celebrating
right
yesterday.
There in the FCT.
Yes, Senator representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpabio, and her supporters. It was jubilation time for them as her office was unsealed by the clerk, I believe, or the relevant representative of the clerk of the National Assembly. And we saw the drama, you know, just before she accessed her office, as the senator and her supporters walked, you know, from through the streets of Abuja all the way to the National Assembly until she gained access into her office. And we saw, you know, celebration galore, and then she addressed the press. Recall that prior to this time, you know, a high court judgment had ruled that her suspension was excessive, and of course there were other areas, other areas in that ruling where she was required to apologize, which caused the debate. Was she supposed to apologize to the court for contempt or to the leadership of the National Assembly? And you know, afterwards, the Senate had said yet again that she couldn't resume until her case was determined by an appeal court. So, well, after all of that, we've seen Senator Natasha, you know, gain access into her office, but it's not quite clear the Senate's position as to her official resumption. You know, after this, we've also seen that the Senate, you know, has gone on a 3-week recess, I believe, but she had quite a lot to say after she gained access into her office yesterday. Yeah,
well, it's good to see her back. Senator Natasha Akpabio, it's good to see her back. It's good to see the Senate unseal her office. I'm not sure who is a better actor or dramatist, because I don't know when it became a practice for the Senate to make a video of the unsealing of the office of someone who was suspended. I don't know when. I'm not sure that a video was made. I think the office is called the Sergeant of Arms or something in the Senate. I'm not sure a video was made when Abdul Ningi was suspended and then he got to resume. I'm not sure a video was made, but perhaps because of how interested Nigerians are about this particular case, maybe that's why a video had to be made to prove that, you know what, look, we have unsealed her office. Maybe it's also good for the Kogi people, because finally they get their rep back so that they can have some sort of representation at the Senate, the National Assembly as well. Well, she has also said, you know what, I am not going to apologize. If you think I'm going to apologize, then we're in for a long, long dance. I'm not sure I want to see that dance continue, Senator Natasha. Let's just see how we can get on with this. Your office has been unsealed. Let's move on as quickly as possible and see how you can make up for the 6 months which you were suspended. I think, too, the Senate finally had to bow to pressure because this wasn't good for the image of the Senate and the leadership of the Senate and the APC-led perhaps Senate leadership, I should say. So it's good that finally they had to bow to pressure, you know, and well, we're going to, unpack this on the show today. So
we'll find out what exactly happened, whether the Senate bowed to pressure or some things may have happened behind the scenes, but we'll find out later. But when you talk about video, I couldn't resist the urge but to recall the position expressed by the Senate spokesman on our sister political program right amid this battle months back when he described, you know, the antiques of the senator representing Kogi Central and her supporters as content creation. But of course, Kelly, you're right on the money when you say that this particular case has gathered, you know, national attention and momentum. It has caused everyone to be emotional, particularly because, you know, woman representation at the leadership, at the national leadership level, is at the heart of the subject matter. And of course, that must be guarded jealously because of the implications of, you know, lack of visibility for women at that level. And the senator has been emphatic about her, you know, continued commitment to working even throughout the period of her suspension. And so, you know, the Kogi Central constituents, the biggest beneficiaries at this point in time following the senator's resumption. But away from home now, let's go to the international community where something interesting played out with the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, was stuck on the streets of New York, and it was a phone call that had to save him. Let's watch this, and then we'll be back.
After he was President, I'm really sorry. It's just that everything's in frozen right now. There's a motorcade coming right now.
Eventually, the barricades opened, but only for pedestrians. President Emmanuel Macron is seen in a video published by Brut calling Trump after he was...
President, I'm really sorry.
Well, if you thought that it was just in Nigeria that, you know, you have to, the traffic has to be stopped in order for the president to gain thoroughfare and be on his way, then you're mistaken. Even the president of a whole country cannot move when the president of the United States is right on his way, you know, to a destination. And this is what happened yesterday. Thankfully, President Trump was only a phone call away from President Macron. I wonder if relations were not friendly, you know, between France and the United States. What could have happened to President Macron yesterday? Kelly, your thoughts on this?
Yes, well, I mean, that relationship to a large extent has been very shaky recently over issues around Ukraine, the position of Israel as regards the war in Gaza and all of that. But I mean, hey, New York, if you're familiar with New York, people say that it's a very busy area, it's a very busy environment, and so we cannot expect anything less, especially when all eyes are right there in New York for the 80th edition of the United Nations General Assembly. The world powers, the world leaders are right there meeting in New York, and big and critical decisions have to be made in the coming days. Already President Trump addressed the assembly yesterday. We understand Vice President Kashim Shettima will also get to address the assembly on Thursday on behalf of President Bola Tinubu. But hey guys, let's get to what our focus and outlook looks like for today, September 24th, 2025. Coming up on the program this morning, the Apex Bank, Nigeria's central bank, reduces interest rate. We get to find out the implications of this latest decision. Big decision indeed by the Apex Bank.
And that's not all. Of course, we'll be touching on the resumption of the senator representing Kogi Central Senatorial District. And so what exactly played out? As Kelly asked, you said earlier on, has the Senate bowed to pressure, or there were other circumstances precipitating Senator Akpabio's resumption? Of course, we'll be touching briefly on that as well, and hopefully getting all sides to the story. And, you know, what is the future of relations relations really between the senator and the leadership of the National Assembly, and indeed her colleagues, because it was a very divisive topic. So we'll be putting all of those questions and concerns through on the program today.
Well, the oil and gas sector gets attention again this morning as we get to look at this dispute, the face-off between Dangote and DAPPMAN. We have some perspectives for you this morning as we get to take a look at what exactly is playing out between these big giants in the oil and gas industry right here in Nigeria. But guess what, guys? This is the morning brief. First things first, we get to take a look at the newspapers' headlines across board this morning. We get some analysis and perspectives from the coal city, Enugu. In just a moment, please stay with us. Many thanks indeed for staying with us. Let's cross over live now to the coal city, Enugu, where Dr. Ambrose Igboke joins us live on the program, media consultant and chairman of the Public Affairs Analysts Association in Enugu State. Thank you indeed for agreeing to talk to us, Dr. Ambrose. As always, good to see you again. Let's get to take a look at some of the dailies this morning, because as usual, it's always very interesting to listen to you and your commentaries. We'll begin this morning with business leaders in Nigerian Tribune. Business leaders express hope as CBN cuts interest rates to 27%. Nigerian Tribune. Business leaders express hope as CBN cuts interest rate to 27%. The CPP says it's a step towards building more resilient and growth-oriented economy. NECA DG is urging strategic easing to boost growth. Dr. Igboke, well, this is the first time we're seeing this growth in, I think, 5 years since the COVID-19 pandemic. I wonder perhaps if you think these are signs of good things to come.
Well, because of the type of interest rate we have in Nigeria already, when we have this kind of 2 or 3% cuts, it does not really translate to anything tangible, because the interest rate in Nigeria is so high. I remember Alhaji Aliko Dangote one time said that when he was starting this refinery some years back, his petroleum refinery, the journalists were asking him why didn't he borrow money from Nigerian banks, because the first set of money he got was actually from South African banks. And he said that the rate was too high, that even if you are planting gold, you make profit from it. And so that is exactly what we have, because if we don't work towards having a single-digit interest rate in Nigeria, then it is not going to work for the SMEs and for the MSMEs as well. Therefore, that is why most of our banks, what they just do, they don't really relief fund SMEs. So they wait for government patronage, went for lodgement of cash from public sector, and then do borrowing to people who are actually trading. I mean, our banks borrow to traders more than the manufacturers. And that is why we are that cycle of marketing. We are importing. When you come to our ports, people will have a large ship consignment that dump goods in Nigeria, then go back empty. That's because our system, our monetary system, fiscal policy, and the whole is not very competitive for the manufacturing sector. So we need to keep lowering it until it gets to a single digit. Perhaps that is why we have great impact.
Well, interesting. Let's go to the Guardian newspaper this morning, which takes a detour from happenings at home to cause us to reflect on happenings in the international community. What's on the Guardian? Yes, the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. It says, UN at 80, wider cracks in world order amid warning on aid cuts, union's future. And we see the actors right there on the front page. President Trump, UN Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General there as well. What are your thoughts on happenings around the world with specific reference to the war in Gaza, in Ukraine, and how it's impacting on the 80th edition of the UN General Assembly?
You and others, I was give kudos to the United Nations for 80 years. They have tried, because the reasons for setting up United Nations, before United Nations, there was what we call the League of Nations. There was League of Nations that came up, I think, after the First World War. But the League of Nations could not prevent the Second World War. So after the Second World War, the United Nations was formed in 1945, and later that transmitted, the war ended in 1945, and then that is what they're trying. So the main reason is to establish peace and make sure there's no world war. But over the years, it has been on paper, as our own legend said, fella, disunited United Nations. So one veto vote. It says 100 nations will vote, and then one country will veto it, and it will not. Then the vote for 100 and something countries will not stand. So that is the kind of politics that go on there. But by and large, world war has been successfully hedged for now. But countries have been warring. Remember the Cold War between the USSR, Eastern Bloc, and the Western Hemisphere, the Western Bloc, that went on for a very, very long time till the Soviet Union was disbanded. Currently, we have wars, proxy wars fought in Ukraine by NATO, and then the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Yes, there are these big boys, the big five, permanent members of the Security Council that nobody can touch. And that is why United Nations will do a resolution against Israel, for example, and the United States will not veto it, and it will not go. So it remains a more academic exercise. So people have accused United Nations of not really having powers, except powers over weak nations, especially in Africa, Latin American countries, and the rest. But the real people who cause the problems, which is some of the countries in Europe and the United States itself, they go scot-free because they are the big five. The United Nations keep being a talk shop, a tea party. Resolutions, cherry-pick resolutions to suit the powers that be. But that is how they formed it. That is how it was configured. And it was configured to favor just a few. For others, we just go talk, make noise every year. We go for General Assembly, make all the noise. Then, by the sidelines, you can do deals for your country, fine and good. If you cannot, you come back with your entourage. It's a year cycle of a culture that a lot of countries don't benefit anything from, actually.
Dr. Agboke, let's take a look at this. Nigeria elates with the oil and gas sector again this morning. Nupeng, others kick against planned sale of oil gas assets. Nupeng, that's this Nigeria. And Nupeng, others kick against planned sale of oil gas assets. It is capable of plunging economy into crisis. I wonder what your thoughts are about this, because, I mean,
for me, there are two things we should look at, and two critical questions we should ask. One, why are we selling the assets? Are we selling the assets to people to do what we call asset stripping, where people buy our assets, people buy our assets, and the next thing is that they sell it out for people? Is that why they are doing that? So it's a big problem for us.
And so much to reflect on as far as the consequences are concerned. And indeed, when you also consider the amount spent on turnaround maintenance of the refineries, so many questions. You can also borrow from the conversation yesterday on the planned amendment of the PIA Act, just to get things to favor the workers. But let's go to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. It trails the MPC's meeting from yesterday. Listen to this: 14 banks fully meet new capital requirements, of course coming from the CBN, and there are a few insights. CBN reduces interest rate to 27%. External reserves hit 43 billion naira. NECA demands reforms to ease cost of living crisis. CBN's easing of credit conditions, a welcome timely intervention. That's ascribed to the CPPE. So beyond the reduction in interest rate is the other issues around how this ties well into fiscal policy and monetary policy. Is there a harmony that you see, and how will it impact really on the real sector?
It is always a problem. Sometimes this we seem to be working on crossroads. It's a big problem in Nigeria. Sometimes there seems to not be a synergy of purpose in our monetary institutions or regulatory institutions. Sometimes also you wonder whether there are not consultations, because those who are the players, the key players in this sector, sometimes complain that they are not carried along. Government just sits down in their boardrooms and make decisions and then tie up those policies. So sometimes there are not enough consultations. So I recommend that there should be more consultations with the players in these various industries. And at the end of the day, we should focus more on the manufacturing sector, so that our GDP can be increased, and so that we can have jobs and for our people to bring down the unemployment rate and the rest. All those policies that just maybe on papers and they do not translate to economic realities are just exercises for the Bretton Woods institutions to satisfy key indicators for the IMF and the rest people. That is not what will save us. What will save us, I think we need to sit down, ask the hard questions, go back to the trenches and roll up our sleeves to have our own kind of economic system that can bolster our own economic growth, especially the manufacturing sector. We need to ask ourselves some hard questions: how we got ourselves here, where we have become a country of traders than a country of manufacturers. How we lost what we had 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and then become almost a beggarly nation. So these are the hard questions. But all these cosmetic policies are not helping us. We need to go hard, do what China did, look inwards and try to create some sustainable actions that will lead us to be a productive nation.
Dr. Akpabio, let's take a look at the final newspaper this morning as we begin to wind down on the review this morning. New Telegraph is perhaps the final newspaper this morning. It says why FG is still borrowing despite 411% revenue increase by Aide. I think that's the FIRS chair. It says revenues grew from 711 billion naira in May 2023 to 3.64 trillion naira in September 2025. When you hear these numbers like this, Dr. Akpabio, it looks like, we're getting somewhere. Like, it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel, as President Bola Tinubu would always say. But this idea of borrowing, is it a concern for you?
Yeah, it is a concern because from simple economics, you borrow. Most countries borrow to fund deficit, budget deficits. So your amount of borrowing also means, okay, you have a budget for the year, you have your projections for your inflow, and then at the end of the day, you now say, okay, with this, we can have this, and then the remaining one we can do borrowing. Now, it is expected that when you borrow, when you make more money, you will be able to fund your budget better, and then you reduce your borrowing. But what we see now is that, in fact, it seems that the more we are making money, the more we are borrowing. So one start asking, is it that the monies we are making, the monumental increase in the revenues we are making, does not in any way translate to funding our budgets, or does not take care of our financial needs? So some people have also talked about, our foreign reserve has increased and the rest. But the bottom line of all this is that, there's what you call outputs and outcomes. Now, all these things for me are outputs. You are doing this, you are making money. But what are the outcomes? The outcome is still that there's still a harsh economic condition in Nigeria. There is still high inflation, high unemployment rate. There's still multidimensional poverty. There is still, our industries are still grounded. We are still major importers. We have not got our acts right. So, so when you bandy these economic figures to Nigerians, we can keep asking, we are making more money, but we are not feeling the impact. And though at the end of the day, every month we share it among the federal government, the state government, and then we share it among the local government. And then the question is asked, what are we doing? You go to some states, you don't even believe you're in Nigeria. You believe that even the war torn Gaza we are talking about and Sudan, they look even better than these places. Recently, I traveled from Abuja to Warri, and you know what I saw, I on the road, I couldn't believe I was in Nigeria. So these things is confounding. And as the late Pope Francis will say, they sound like voodoo economics. And I think we should come back and start making sure that all this translates to better living for Nigerians.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it this morning. Dr. Ambrose Igboke, thank you indeed, as always, for analysis and commentaries. Dr. Ambrose Igboke is a media consultant and chairman, Guild of Public Affairs Analyst of Nigeria, Enugu State Chapter. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much for having me on the show this morning.
As always, this is the Morning Brief. Time to unpack and dissect our very first conversation on the show this morning. As we get to take a look at Nigeria's economy again, the CBN has reduced interest rates by 50 basis points to 27%. But what exactly are the implications of this on inflation and employment and other issues? We are back in just a moment as we get perspectives from the nation's capital, Abuja. Please stay with us.
The committee's decision to lower the monetary policy rate was predicated on the sustained disinflation recorded in the past 5 months, projections of declining inflation for the rest of 2025, and the need to support economic recovery efforts.
The message is clear. The CBN.
Well, many thanks indeed for staying with us here on the program. This is the Morning Brief. Let's get to take a look at Nigeria's economy now. Bukola, you have this one.
Yes, indeed. And Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, economist, joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you for joining us on the program. Or he joins us virtually. Mr. Emmanuel, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here, Bukola.
Yes,
Good
indeed.
morning.
So after 5 months of consecutive inflation decline, and of course we also recall what many analysts described as hawkish approach to tightening interest rate, we finally see a reduction. Were you surprised by this reduction?
Bukola, it's quite an interesting conversation, and I'm not obligated to be politically correct because I'm not holding a brief for the Nigerian government. I'll say it as it is. The first question we should ask is inflation actually where it is, where the MBS claims it is today? Is the MBS, under undue political pressure and interference from the government? Are they moves in National Assembly to make the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics financially autonomous, so their funding does not come from directly from the government, and they are not subjected to political leverage? Because one thing you should never joke with is statistics. One thing a government should never joke with is statistics. So for example, CBN operates what they call inflation targeting, which means that there's what they call yield curve differential, your interest to inflation yield curve. And by that targeting, it means that you constantly have to place the interest rates, the monetary policy rates, which is being reduced to 27% from 27.5%. by 50 basis points to the inflation level by around 4%, which was the reason why before this questionable rebasing exercise that was done with the 2019 calendar year by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, they targeted inflation at 32% to 27.5%, which means that as the inflation level, for example, reduces, the CBN is obligated to reduce the interest rates, right? So the question is, if, for example, the CBN is targeting inflation at 4%, which means that the MPR is supposed to be anywhere around 4 to 5% lower than the inflation level, and then according to the government, inflation is a little below 21% currently. Why is the CBN not cutting interest rates drastically by maybe 500 basis points, 5%, down to like 22%, 22.5, or even below 20%? Why are they cutting just by 50 basis points? That's a question we should ask. And they're doing that because the monetary policy, the monetary policy committee, the MPC, which is made up of about 11 or 12 members, they have what they call the Monetary Policy Technical Committee and Monetary Policy Implementation Committee. Those ones are tasked with, guiding the Monetary Policy Committee, putting all the data available for them to make decision on all these metrics, asymmetric corridor, monetary policy rates, cash reserve ratio. Cash reserve ratio was maintained at 50%, but the non-TSA public sector CRR, cash reserve ratio, which is the public sector funds that are outside of the Treasury single accounts. For example, you remember when 24 months ago, Wike became the minister of the FCT. He had gone to the government, the president, and said he wanted the FCT to be moved out of the TSA, and they granted him that request. So the funds for the FCT, for example, are outside of the TSA. And what Cardozo has done is he's jacked that to 75%, which means that 75% of public sector monies that are outside of Treasury single accounts are to be parked at the Central Bank of Nigeria. I don't know if they are currently applying an interest on cash reserve ratio. So the point is, the first question we have to ask, we have to question the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. Are they independent? Are they truly independent? Or are they under undue political pressure? Because when you look at the rebasing of inflation, and you see how they grouped energy and housing and water into one basket and said it's just 15.8%, when prior to that, energy was taking 20% of the cost price index basket for calculating inflation, then it becomes very questionable. They reduce food from 60% to 50.8%, yet food inflation remains one of the biggest problems we have today in Nigeria.
But Mr. Emmanuel, one of the things that may not be under the influence, or if you like, the whims and caprices of the NBS, would be the price of food. And we have seen that in the last couple of weeks reduce. And we have, in fact, confirmed this from the food sellers right here on the program. How much of this are you factoring into your analysis?
Well, you've confirmed that, but then the question is, what's the critical mass of Nigerians that you've confirmed from? Because prices of food varies in different parts of Nigeria, and that's why you have what they call the headline rate, because you basically put the prices across several states in Nigeria, all the states in Nigeria. You get the aggregate, and then you divide it by the number of states. That's how you get the headline inflation rates. And that's how you also get the headline food inflation rate. So the question is, you ask people, for example, in Lagos, or for example, in Abuja, imported foods are cheaper in Lagos because of the ports. But imported foods are not cheap in the north because of the cost of logistics to transport it to the north. And because Nigeria doesn't have a functional cargo rail system to move foods. Foods grown in Nigeria is cheaper in the north because it's grown mostly in Nigeria in the north. But food grown in Nigeria is not cheap in Lagos because most of it is transported to Lagos, and Lagos has a landmass, the smallest landmass in Nigeria, about 30,527 square kilometers. So farming is not exactly his selling point. So how are you, assessing the people who came and said that food prices have gone down? What spread of survey did you do to confirm that food prices are actually going down? Because Nigerians are going through the ringer. GDP per capita, the GDP was rebased to $230 billion from $188 billion. But when you look at the GDP per capita on the purchasing price parity basis, Nigerians are not doing very well. So this is a question we need to ask, because the integrity of the data, is what will help decision making. And when the data is lopsided because of undue political pressure, then they will make decisions that are not exactly accurate. And the fact that Cardozo and his team are only confident to reduce it by 50 basis points because there's been a lot of pressure from people saying, oh, the MPS is reporting inflation is going down. Why are you not adjusting the interest rates? It shows you that they don't actually believe those numbers, because if they do, they'll be cutting by anywhere around 300 to 500 basis points.
Mr. Emmanuel, I like the fact that your opening thoughts had to capture the issues around the MBS and the political undertone, because somewhere in the U.S. as well, there's that back and forth between U.S. President Mr. Donald Trump and the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jeremy Powell, who is also an investor and bank and lawyer. So I like the fact that your opening thoughts had to capture that. I was going to ask you about that, if perhaps as we begin to count down to 2027, if these numbers and the big decisions are politically motivated. But let me just go straight and ask you something else, because I know that the Fed chair, the U.S. Fed chair, Jeremy Powell, had also hinted on the need to cut interest rates in the U.S. So I'm just also wondering, are we just doing copy and paste here? Because we're very good at that. The U.S. does presidential system of government, we copy. Tomorrow it's a parliamentary system of government, and then we copy as well. So is it just a copy and paste system here that we are doing as well?
Well, the U.S. Federal Reserve, thank you for asking this question, and good morning to you. You know, the U.S. has the largest economy in the world, so they've always given forward guidance to all the other central banks around the world, the Bank of Japan, the People's Bank of China, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, the Reserve Bank of Russia, the Reserve Bank of India, and the likes of them. They've always given forward guidance. But usually when you cut the FOMC rate, Federal Open Market Committee rates in America, there's a flow of capital to frontier and emerging markets. But when you increase it, there's the flow of capital to safe havens like the US, because Treasury yields appreciate, and investors prefer the safe haven like the classifieds. But if you look at the spark between Donald Trump and Chair Jeremy Powell, and you see the fact that recently Trump tried removing one of the Federal Reserve board governors, and she went to court, and the appeal struck down the decision of the U.S. president and reinstated her, because the U.S. president doesn't have the authority to remove a governor or like the central bank chair unless there is a process that is gone through, and the Senate is two-thirds vote approval from the U.S. Congress approving or ratifying that decision, which has not been done. You see, the decisions on monetary policy are so sensitive that it doesn't care about political posturing or how your government looks. The numbers are the numbers. You have to make decisions based on cold, hard data. So what Trump is attempting to do in America by saying that, despite the fact that inflation is higher than it was when he came into office because of the decisions on tariff and all the geopolitical instability of having energy prices that you currently have, the fact that Russia, Nord Stream 1 and 2 is out of service, Europe is not getting gas, and prices of energy is ramping up. You can't force interest rates down because you want your government to look good when inflation is up. It doesn't work that way. If you focus on the drivers and you decelerate inflation, then the central bank will automatically respond. And this is my point exactly about Nigeria. I don't see the heavy lifting. Yes, there's been improvements, some level of stability upstream in terms of production. Nigeria has finally been able to reach OPEC quota, and now the discussion has gone from how do we raise the technical allowance rates to increase how much barrels we pump to surface on a daily basis. How do we get OPEC to increase our quota by another 30 to 400,000 barrels per day, or how do we decouple OPEC quota from our strategic petroleum reserve stock for domestic refineries in Nigeria, to get more dollars that are outside of the wholesale agreements the government currently has. Government has about 300,000 barrels committed to loans that are taking that pays on a daily basis. And if you look at the daily crude allocation, there isn't so much free barrels out of about 820,000 barrels that belong to the government that it can use to get USD liquidity to be able to, raise the balance of payment for net external reserves. And the CBN has done some work in terms of trying to see if it can raise the diaspora remittances and also to raise the net export proceeds it gets for companies who export to bring their dollars back to the originating bank for the CBN to do balance of payments and for the FX markets to be liquid, So, look, the government needs to understand that reform takes a process, and the danger is in trying to look good before the 2027 elections, the government might end up forcing pressure on presenting numbers that do not reflect reality and making the central bank to make mistakes and undo the progress we're currently making. So this is my point exactly. So the numbers do not have feelings. Numbers are the numbers. The numbers are unemotional. The government needs to do what it needs to do to make sure that the levers of macroeconomic data looks good so that the Monetary Policy Committee will respond accordingly.
Mr. Manuel, I'm not sure how much of a football lover or follower you are, but I know that football managers employ formations 4-2-2, 4-4-2, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. So this, when you look at these economic reforms and the style and this idea of a capitalist system of government and economy, I wonder if you think it does suit Nigeria, the peculiarities of Nigeria.
So that's a very good timely question you asked. You see, socialist system has not really worked because in the socialist system you pegged the interest rates. I'll give you an example. Dangote, for example, placed FX forwards for about $250 million to $300 million at 390. It was supposed to be a T90 transaction, which means transaction was supposed to be settled within 90 days. And the rates went up to about 1,900 within the period. It wasn't settled for more than 3 years, and then overdraft charges were accumulated in billions of naira, and several other manufacturing companies that placed forwards amounting to about $2 billion that has been returned with serious losses in overdraft charges because of the swap between the naira that is accumulating interest rates and the dollar that was lended to them by their banks to settle those obligations. You see, the socialist system we have in Nigeria, right, does not work because you can't have a situation where the economy is based on a capitalist structure and the government is taking taxes and government-owned enterprise revenues to subsidize petrol, subsidize FX, subsidize electricity. And the government is not raising as much revenues as fast as it should raise it to, be able to solve these social demands. And then it has to borrow, which was the foundation of the crisis we got into in the first place, because between power subsidy, FX subsidy, and petrol subsidy, you are spending about 13 trillion naira on a yearly basis, right? And then because the government could not raise enough revenues to cover these demands, it ended up having to borrow from the central bank and printing money it didn't have. The currency depreciated, inflation went up. This was the cause of this whole crisis we're in today. So if you create a socialist system, you have to have the money to be able to fund it. If you don't have the money to fund it, you can't borrow to fund the socialist economy, right? Which is the reason why I'm saying that the reforms are in the right direction. But the president and his team, they need to show goodwill to the people by being prudent and financially responsible, so that when they're telling people to be patient and sacrifice, they are not telling the people, do as I say and don't do as I do.
Speaking of
this is the moral hazard.
And speaking of the reforms being in the right direction, the MPC's decisions, and they also told us yesterday, by the way, that the foreign reserve has grown to $43 billion. And some are asking why we need to borrow. Last week, the Guardian was telling us about money illusion fueling fiscal crisis. Do you see an alignment between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy for economic stability?
So, it's interesting because usually budgets have revenue and debt components. But the question is, I believe that the government should be generating more revenues than it's currently generating. That's why, if you notice very well, I've been very focused on the oil and gas sector, and because I think that's the lowest hanging fruit for generating revenues, and the FX liquidity, you need to stabilize the FX markets. I think the naira is undervalued by about 28 to 29%. And the true north of the naira is anywhere around 1,100 to 1,150 naira to a US dollar. But that will not happen unless you have significant deposit in your net external reserve that is not encumbered by swaps and forwards, and you can supply enough liquidity to cover the non-deliverable forwards market. I'd say you have about $28 billion that are held by Nigerians in the banking system today onshore for speculative reasons. The reason why they're holding that much liquidity is because you don't have, one, a functional forwards market and a very liquid foreign exchange market. So if, for example, in 6 months, my company, for example, I'm just giving hypotheticals, is supposed to import maybe $2 million worth of goods from China. The question I should be asking as a businessman is, what assurance do I have that in 6 months' time, the FX rate is going to stay the same and it's not going to move to 1,750 or 1,600? That's the question. No, so because of that lack of clarity and assurance, people buy FX upfront, keep in their banks, and sometimes the smart ones do some kind of transactions with the bank and then they pay them interest on that money on the short term until they need the money. All of that liquidity, affects the exchange rate. For you to, have a situation where Nigerians are comfortable holding their naira until they need it, or a situation where they can easily go to their bank and buy a premium, with 5 or 10% of the monies they need, and then be sure that when they actually need the money for the transaction, the banks will deliver the money for them. You need liquidity in the FX markets, right? If you don't have that liquidity, you're going to have a situation where, people will keep speculating and holding money, so much money onshore that will affect the naira to dollar exchange rate and affect all other metrics of the economy, because exchange rate has a huge impact on inflation.
This sounds like a mixed bag there, with more of the downsides than the positives. But clearly it's an ongoing conversation and we must anchor it at this point. Always a delight to have you, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, an economist who has joined us on this one.
Thank you for having me.
And there's more to come on the program. This time we'll touch on the downstream sector as regards, this brewing conflict between marketers. Stay with us for this one. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, and many thanks indeed for staying with us. Let's get to unpack this dispute, this face-off between the Dangote Refinery Group and, of course, DAPPMAN. We have DAPPMAN right here with us this morning. We have the spokesperson of DAPPMAN right here in our Lagos studios, Mr. Ikem Ohia, who joins us live. Ohia, who joins us live on the program. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us this morning. This face-off has been ongoing for quite some time now. I think it's almost a month now, but there have been reactions. There have been counter-accusations. In fact, Dangote's friend has also, had to show some words and support for his friend, even though some of you say, oh, he was part of us a few years ago. He even started DAPPMAN and all of that, but he has said, look, you guys have to innovate. Change is the only constant thing. So from your standpoint and from your association, let's hear you out. What exactly are the issues?
Primarily, thank you very much, first of all, for having me on the station and for us to be able to convey our position clearly to the Nigerian public. I want to clarify one thing. We are not in conflict. That word, we run away from it. Not because we are afraid of it, but far from it. We want to collaborate instead. Our key interest here is the Nigerian public, to offer our petroleum products at reasonable prices to Nigerians consistently in a way or manner to ensure that at no stage do we have any stockouts. The Nigerian public benefits from making sure there are no more queues. And the key thing here is a question of pricing. It's pricing that is the key issue here. Supply, coincidentally, or presently, is by a dominant player, which we accept and which we welcome. That's Dangote Refinery. But the point in issue here is we need to have access to programs, to products from this refinery. And that's where the core of the problem lies. Question is, at what prices does he offer us? And do we have access to actually purchase these products from him? Most of us, there's the depots which are located in, starting from Calabar, Port Harcourt, Warri, up to Lagos, various areas in Lagos, is to enable us be able to service existing markets, which over the past 20 years or more, we have been able to firmly put in place logistics and supply trains that enable us ensure that products get to all nooks and crannies of Nigeria, from these depots located in those locations I mentioned. What we're asking Dangote to do is to use these depots that are already in existence for us to be able to meet the demand of Nigerians.
And that's what's being frowned at. The report is that you're bellyaching over a post-subsidy regime, asking for 1.5 trillion naira. Is that the case? Please provide
definitely.
Clarity of this.
To start with, the word subsidy only applies to when governments subsidize certain products in a country to ensure that the citizens of that country benefit from it. That is far from being the case, with due respect. That is not at all applicable in this. All that we have here is an issue of pricing. It's a commercial business. We are businessmen. He is a businessman. He has established a refinery. And coincidentally, that refinery has the capacity to actually meet our needs. But the question is, does he really supply all our needs?
So where does the 1.5 trillion naira request come from?
We don't know where he arrived at. He says that. No, because the key thing here is he alleges, and it's for him to establish and prove.
So DAPPMAN is not asking for 1.5?
No, far from it. Hey, this is completely ridiculous. We're not asking for anything like a subsidy. We went into negotiations and are still in negotiations with him to see whether he can bridge that gap. The key issue here is there are two ways in which he now and most refineries do supplies. You have wholesale, which we are angling for. That is, for us to be able to pick products in bulk with vessels with a minimum capacity of 30,000 metric tons or more.
Well,
and let me land.
All right, go ahead.
And sales ex-gantry, which is like retailing. Ideally, most refineries lay more emphasis on ensuring that they bulk evacuate whatever it is through off-takers who are able to lift massive quantities to be able to make sure that the refinery is in a position to quickly go into production, replenish stocks. As it brings in crude, it refines. The idea is to make sure it evacuates within a reasonable period of time, not be able to keep stock. That is not, well, that's his own business model, but I'm not too sure that's the best for him. But I can't dictate.
So some will argue that the refinery is just starting. It's a 650,000 barrel per day capacity. It's just starting. It's the biggest in the continent and needs a lot of support from Nigerians. But it looks as if the system within, the cabals within the oil and gas sector are fighting him. That's part of the allegations.
Far from it, we're not part of any cabal. We're not fighting him. We welcome and embrace. Even before he commenced production, we reached out to him for him to allow us collaborate with him and be able to take products in bulk.
So what was the response from Dangote?
It has been one of back and forth. Understanding has not been firmly reached. Instead, he prefers to work with a few select, should I use the word partners, which
has excluded DAPPMAN.
It has one or two members of DAPPMAN, but what we are requesting and what we believe would help the country is to have an open door policy. You don't have to select, which is like you're trying to control whatever goes out. Open the system.
So let me quickly ask this.
Yeah, please
this
do.
Pricing negotiation that you're into with Dangote.
Yes, please.
Does it include the retention of the depot model?
Why not? Because all over the world, you have these depot models to assist refineries evacuate products in a way and manner that will enable it to be able to have a quicker turnaround of whatever it refines.
And that's where his friend and, colleague, Femi Otedola, frowns on. And let me quote from his statement, which caused a stir. He says, DAPPMAN members should be focusing on owning and scaling last-mile retail outlets, not holding on to tanks built for a fuel import economy that no longer serves us. The global picture is instructive. Depots in Amsterdam or Houston were designed to serve export markets, especially Africa. So why are you holding on to an old model?
We're not holding on to an old model. We're holding on to an existing model. And may I correct one thing? Quite a good number of DAPPMAN members are playing in the retail space. A good number of them have stations, 300 stations out there, which are available for him to use. But for reasons best known to him, he is selective in those he wants to supply products to, which we believe is actually anti-competitive, but we don't want to go into the legalese of it. The key thing here is we're looking at the interests of Nigerians. So far, whatever he has been able to supply to the market still does not meet the entire needs of the market. And I stand to be corrected. Figures don't lie. They're there, out there, and can be obtained.
He said clearly in the past that he has capacity to meet
the
domestic consumption of Nigeria.
We're not doubting the fact that he has capacity. The question is the supply angle. He prefers to retail through his gantry. And we're telling him, yes, with due respect, yes, you can go through, supply through your gantry, but it cannot satisfy the market purely through that particular outlet. Use bulk available supplies to depots for us to be able to now meet the needs of the people. Now,
but if he can supply directly to marketers, that will cut costs and there will be no need for the depots, and that will benefit Nigerians in terms of pricing. And you're saying that you're pushing for a template that will benefit Nigerians, but it looks more like direct delivery would be more beneficial to Nigerians because it would, ultimately mean a reduction in price.
It appears so, but that's not true. We have approached him. For those of us who have retail outlets, we have reached out to him already in this. We find out that he's telling us, yes, we can partner with you in that respect, but we will end up supplying you. We want you to use our trucks. That's one. We want you to use our trucks on commercial basis. That means that's so-called free delivery. Apparently, is not free for those of us who want to pick large quantities from him. And he's insisting that 25% of whatever we pick off him must be picked through his gantry. I hope you appreciate where we're coming from. We want to collaborate. We want to plug that gap because whatever the case may be, he still cannot totally supply the entire country only through gantry.
But he's a businessman.
Yeah, we agree.
So if it's going to be more cost-effective for him to supply directly, why, tackle him over that?
We're not tackling him over that. All we're saying is allow us to participate in each stage of such supplies in a way and manner that will make it possible for us to also assist the Nigerian public. Because he cannot, I keep repeating, he cannot meet the total demand of what we consume today in Nigeria.
Well, he would argue with that. He would argue with that. So is that the reason why you, DAPPMAN, have tagged him as a monopolist?
It is clear that that is where he's headed to. We cannot comment on that. But obviously, if you select only a few people to deal with and you leave out the bulk of key players in the downstream, the tendency is for one to might be quote that as being a monopoly. We're not saying he has monopolist tendencies, no.
All right.
But what we're saying is he should work with us so that we can collaborate and meet the needs of the people.
Okay. Part of the accusations, and I should say these are very, very weighty accusations against DAPPMAN from Dangote, is that DAPPMAN is diverting local products to neighboring countries. These are very, very weighty allegations. If these products are not even enough to satisfy the Nigerian population, then there is a diversion, allegedly.
Totally not true. And we state this clearly. Let him come and establish. Let him give us facts. Let him cite instances. Let him tell us who is involved. He has mentioned one or two names. We'll leave that. Let him come and establish actually how, when, where, and what quantities we're talking about. It's not true. We maintain that that is not true. That's, I might use the word, a horrendous accusation, which has absolutely no basis in.
Maybe perhaps one or two of your members are into these diversion, and perhaps you're not even aware.
No. I make people to say that none of us are. And those few names he mentioned, we leave it to them at the appropriate time to seek legal redress. But as we said, those are their own options.
So if you say categorically that Dangote is unable to meet domestic consumption requirement, what would be the exact measure of Nigeria's domestic consumption requirement? Because this has been at the heart of the debate, even before the removal of subsidy. How much exactly is the, daily consumption supply of Nigerians in terms of petrol? Well,
the regulator, that's the NNDPRA, is in the best position to provide figures. But from the little information we have garnered so far, and that's why we quoted figures, we have said to him that, look, take for instance, in June, the supply total consumption of PMS in particular was about 1.4 million liters into the Nigerian market, out of which he was able to meet 450. He actually supplied 455 million liters inland into the country. That comes to roughly about 30%. What happened to the balance? We had to plug that balance by resorting to ways of bringing products, quality products, bringing products into the country. So we were telling him, instead of allowing that particular scenario, and that's because he relies more on gantry sales, what we are trying to do is to encourage him, open your portal, let us come and take quantities, large quantities, and bridge that gap. Because it's not that it's not capable of, far from it, the refinery can produce enough to satisfy the, but the issue is the supply pattern, which he wants to resort to. Even with this direct trucking, I'm able to ask him to tell us what is the quantity of products so far he has been able to supply. It cannot meet the demand through just gantry sales. That's our standpoint. We want to work with him for the benefit of Nigerians. That's the key thing here. Give us the opportunity to work together with you. Allow us to take products at prices that make sense so that we can be selling X depot at prices similar to that of your gantry. I know you're a businessman, you want to make more money, fine. But we are ready to work with you to block that gap.
So if pricing is at the heart of the matter, with the competition that we're now seeing, Dangote reducing the pump price of petrol in the last couple of months, and we see marketers, affiliated with him selling at similar reduced rate. What price is DAPPMAN assuring Nigerians that its own marketers will be able to sell if this negotiation that you are proposing with Dangote comes through, such that Nigerians
we want to assure Nigerians that indeed, if he does give us products in bulk, to discount our transportation costs, that's transshipment to our depots, and the various discharge delivery costs, we will match the same prices he's offering to Nigerians. That's an assurance we're giving Nigerians. So you're confident you can sell at 860? Why not? If he does the right thing by allowing us to sit together, agree on such pricing, which he thinks is or claims is subsidy. There's no question of subsidy here. No, it's a business transaction. I mean, hey, two businessmen can work out things. That the key thing here is for us to arrive at something that is beneficial to the Nigerian.
Mr. Oha, you have debunked allegations around free delivery scheme, the pricing strategy, the allegations around the subsidy, and then the diversion of the local products to neighboring countries. I don't know if DAPPMAN was also part of the meeting with the DSS, because we understand it's Nupeng and its allies. So I don't know if DAPPMAN was also privy to that meeting. Were you in that meeting as well? No, we didn't participate because it technically has nothing to, it doesn't have anything directly to do with us. It has everything to do with the tail end, the area which is exclusive, that of transportation of products and delivery across the country. All over the years, there's been a systematic, a value chain in how products get to the petrol stations and definitely to the public. All right. The area of transportation is an area where NATO members
play a role. And that's why they are the ones that are involved in these meetings along with NUPENG, which...
Because I was just going to ask you if perhaps you stand with NUPENG on this issue of unionization.
That's an area which we leave out because we ourselves also have dealings with them in sort of the same issue.
Because your template encourages the workers that we find in NUPENG. Am I correct?
Of course, we do. We have various arrangements with them, and each of us have individual. We're talking of staff welfare here. So those are issues.
So you stand with NUPENG?
Yeah, I mean, we are all working together to achieve what? The key purpose here is to make sure Nigerians who employ are adequately remunerated. I know he does the same, so he should go ahead and negotiate with them and then work out.
So can you confirm the report about the introduction of 50,000 naira on each truck by NUPENG?
I can't confirm because I'm not NUPENG. We do respect that.
Would it be justified if it were true, such that we can sustain the template of truck drivers, the middlemen who ferry petrol to marketers?
It has. I make bold to say that, look, NUPENG is a body of its own. It has its own methods of how it organizes its
That's not the answer to the question.
No, the bottom line is we don't know. We cannot say for sure that that's the figure which they demand. But we do know that they do charge something for their services.
Which would amount to an increase in the pump price of petrol in the final analysis, right?
Well, they're in a position to argue. I don't want to dabble in areas which are not. I can't give you figures. I can't give you facts. We're showing Nigerians that look.
Comes through that.
No, we're hoping that it comes out well, and then such issues are thrashed out amicably.
Well, we hope so.
Of Nigerians.
We hope so because we confirmed yesterday that Dangote and NUPENG are already in court. We hope that we don't get to see DAPPMAN and Dangote in court as well.
Absolutely, that's not
because
we're not out here to dabble into legal issues.
But the interesting thing is that we've said it yesterday that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. But in this case, Nigerians are getting to know the revelations and the happenings and some events that play out in that sector where some of you have been for many years. But we must thank you indeed for stopping by our studios this morning to talk to us. Hopefully these issues are resolved in no time. The spokesperson, DAPPMAN, Mr. Ikem Ohia, right here on our studios. Thank you indeed for your analysis.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope I'm able to have debunked some of the issues that are raised here.
I hope you get to make the sale of fuel cheaper for Nigerians. Well, that's the much we can take on this segment of the show. This is the Morning Brief. We're not done with you just yet because we get to take a look at something really very interesting, and that's the issue at the Senate, the resumption of Senator Natasha Akpabio and her massive and huge supporters. We'll get some perspectives from her camp and that of the Senate President in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. And so after months of contention, back and forth, suspension and many court cases, we see the senator representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpabio, gaining access into her office for the first time after the expiration of her 6 months suspension. So what were the conditions, enabling her return to office? And has she officially resumed? Let's get some clarification as the consultant on communications and strategy, Office of the Senate President, Mr. Ken Okolubo, joins us now on the program. Mr. Okolubo, rather, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now loud and clear. Welcome to the program.
I know you don't use Mr. on programs, but I'm a knight, so they call me Sir Okolubo. I'm not my Mr., but it's fine to have me. Thank you.
Sir Okolubo. Don't worry, we'll make an exception. Thank you for joining us. So give us an insight into what may have transpired, such that we don't run ahead with the conclusion that the Senate has bowed to pressure and allowed Senator Akpabio to gain access into her office. So what exactly transpired and led us here to her return to office?
You recall that Senator Natasha Akpabio was suspended on the 6th of March, 2025 for gross misconduct. That was after the February 20 debacle where she refused to take her seat, and it was on live television. And her conduct was such that the Senate found it very despicable, and she was charged to the Ethics and Privileges and Public Petitions Committee. And that was done by Senator Yemi Adaramodu, the spokesman of the Senate. After that was done, the conclusion and the findings were presented before the Senate, and a decision was taken. And when the decision was taken, she was suspended for 6 months. And you know, the Senate is an institution that goes with their rules and regulations. She was in court, like you rightly know, and a judgment was given by Justice Binta Nyako. She attempted to resume in July, which was premature because the judgment of Justice Binta Nyako did not order her to be reinstated. It was an obiter, it was an opinion that said that the 6-month suspension was excessive. And she had gone to the Court of Appeal, where on her own grounds of appeal, ground 23, clearly questioned why Justice Binta Nyako should have ordered her reinstatement, or rather said that her suspension was excessive, but did not order that she should be reinstated. But besides that, why she went to court was not on the issue of her suspension. It was on the issue of her fundamental human rights, which she said was going to be infringed on if she was allowed to be moved to the Committee on Ethics and Public Petition. So, you know, the court is not Father Christmas. We have plethora authorities. You cannot ask the court to give you what you have not demanded for. That would be, you know, delving into the voyage of discovery and delving into the arena. And so it was quite mind-boggling that while she had her appeal, and you fully well that she was questioning the judgment of Justice Binta Nyako, she came with a whole lot of people, which a lot of people consider as street urchins, and invaded the Senate and the House of Rep. You must agree that those are two chambers that are housed in the National Assembly. Then yesterday again, she had a case in court. The federal government of Nigeria is charging her on 2 different counts. One for cyber crime and another one for criminal defamation. The first one came up on Monday, the 22nd. That was at the Federal High Court. The second one came up at the Federal Capital Territory High Court, which was for criminal defamation. And incidentally, the Senate was supposed to resume yesterday, but has been postponed to the 7th of October. In fact, most of us would have been in Abuja but for the postponement. And what should have naturally happened was that since the leadership of the Senate had decided that they were going to unseal her office, meaning that the 6-month suspension has come to an end, it wasn't necessary that she had to go to her office yesterday. But she insisted on going to her office yesterday, even after knowing fully well that the secretary has taken possession and had been allowed to take inventories with the deputy sergeant at arms, Alabi Adedeji, who unsealed the office. She chose to go with that crowd of, do those crowd look like people who were not hooligans, who were trying to fight the police, who forced their way into the first gate of the National Assembly? That is more or less conduct that could likely cause the breach of peace. And so it's shocking that a distinguished senator will try to denigrate the same institution that she is representing.
So, Okolugo, I mean, it's interesting to hear you use those words on the Nigerians that were with her. I think it's not appropriate to use such words. I mean, we do not know
What word did I use?
Well, the word you just used, describing the people saying they look like hooligans.
I didn't use it. I said, would you ask yourself if they did not act like hooligans? I didn't say they were hooligans.
Okay. So you're now faulting.
I said they not act like hooligans.
Yes.
In your own,
all right, just a moment.
Understanding,
just
what you saw in that video, how will you tell
all right, let's not go to all of that. So now you're faulting the fact that she even had to resume yesterday. That's now also a concern, right?
No, not a concern. She could have gone to resume since her office has been opened, but without that crowd, it was unnecessary. It was more like you know, just creating content and giving a reason for social media
All right.
For news that were very unnecessary.
Well, perhaps it does show that the people are on her side. Sir Ken, allow me to use Sir Ken.
That is not an indication. I beg to disagree.
All right, no problem.
Senators and House of Rep members have supporters.
You've made your case.
They can all raise their supporters when they want to come to resume or come to the office.
You have made your case.
They were all voted by thousands of people. Everybody has the ability of raising support. So that's not about the people being on your side.
Let me ask you two questions.
How you conduct yourself that matters a whole lot.
All right, let me ask you two questions in one. So you do not think that the allegations of sexual harassment, intimidation, as she has alleged, you do not think that these allegations are true? That's number one. Number two, in Senate crimes, your boss, your principal, the Senate president, should have stepped down and not preside over this particular matter, but he had to do that. He had to even bring in his family into the mix when he presided over that particular case, or when it was mentioned. I remember him telling us.
I don't understand where you are taking us to. You are taking us back. What has he presided over? The issue of sexual harassment is before the court.
Yes.
Akpabio, the Senate president, has taken that matter before the court. Let me update you. You are not updated. You are saying he would have stepped aside. What would he have stepped aside for?
But in Senate crimes, I mean, this has happened not.
I don't understand what you mean by Senate crimes. I'll have to correct you.
Perhaps step down to allow
there is no issue of Senate crimes here. An issue was brought before the Ethics and Public Petitions Committee. A petition was laid there by Senator Natasha and she was given an opportunity for her to present evidence, and she did not present any iota of evidence. And she did not even come, even when she was asked to come. She sent representation, and the matter was actually dealt with. So what do you mean by Senate crimes? You should try to educate Nigerians and not mislead them.
Yes, so you do not think that
of sentiments.
Pardon me if I may come in there, Sir Kolubu. The question is valid, even though you know it's a reversal into what is in the past. But let's move forward now.
This is a build-up to what has happened.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So if we're moving forward now, can you confirm to us if Senator Natasha Akpabio only gained access into her office and has not resumed official duties yet, what is the position of the Senate on this very important matter?
That certainly is a position that Senator Yemi Adoramodu, the spokesperson of the Senate, will be delving into very soon. But she has gained access to her office. She has every right to go to her office. The 6 months has lapsed. Even though the case is at the Court of Appeal, the leadership of the Senate took a wise decision, because no matter where the decision flows, it looks more like an academic exercise because the 6 months has lapsed. Every other decision will be taken by the Senate leadership and the senators when they resume on the 7th of October. I wouldn't be able to speak on that.
Do you know that it's an important question? Because the Senate had, prior to this time, said she cannot resume until her case is
It wasn't the Senate that said she cannot resume, Bukola. It was the clerk who replied.
But the clerk is a representative
the clerk
of
is the administrative head of the Senate. But he corrected himself on a second correspondence and said, look, it is the Senate leadership or the court that can decide the fate of Senator Natasha Akpabio. And the Senate leadership have decided and have said, you can have access to your office, which means his resumption.
Whichever way you look at it, Sir Kolubu, the clerk is a representative of the Senate. And prior to this time, you know, a court had restrained the Senate Ethics and Privileges Committee from taking disciplinary action against Senator Natasha Akpabio.
It was vacated. It was vacated, Bukola.
It would appear as if the Senate is selective in its approach to...
no, Bukola, that restriction was vacated.
Acting on court orders. Go ahead.
Justice Egwato. He vacated it before he decided to recuse himself, and the case was taken over by Justice Bintanyaku. So there was nothing that was restraining the Senate Committee on Ethics and Public Petition from taking their decision. Then again, there's something I even thought you would even ask. She said she was treated like a servant. Senator Natasha Akpabio was inaugurated on the 2nd of November 2023. By the 20th of November 2023, she had been named the committee chairman on local content. By January of 2024, she was already a member of the International Public Parliamentary Union. She was made a member of the ECOWAS. She has submitted 3 bills. And interestingly, Bukola, while she was on suspension, her bill on Federal Medical Center in Hima, Kogi State, was passed into law. How many senators have bills that have been passed into law?
Yes.
By a fusion of her performance for the period she served in the Senate, They are nominated as the Senator of the Year. So how would she have been treated as a servant to have
she's not
all those?
She's not here right now to provide clarity on which areas of treatment that she's talking about. But she also said something.
I just gave you facts. Facts are separate.
There are subsequent events that have happened after the facts that you have presented. So we'll wait for her representative to speak to elaborate on that. But she has also said that the document by which she was suspended may have been fraudulent. She spoke to that yesterday, that it wasn't signed by the leadership of the Senate. I'd like you to speak to that.
In fact, Senator Yemi Aderomodu, I know will address that. But if there was anything fraudulent, the senators that signed would have cried out. None of them cried out. So if not even one of the senators that signed said it was fraudulent and the motion was taken on the floor of the House, don't forget that the motion were in two phases. One, that she was to be suspended for 6 months. And the second was that if she apologizes, she will be allowed into the that suspension will be rescinded. But she did not take any of the options. And within the 6 months she served her suspension, nobody came and said my signature was forged or I wasn't part of this resolution. And even Senator Osita Angu, who was the one that moved the motion on National Iron Mining Company of Nigeria bill on the 2nd of November, the day she was inaugurated, who is incidentally a member of PDP and also in her party, is a member of that committee. And we also have the likes of Senator Binta Kinjigbe. Sorry, Senator Kinjigbe is also a member of that committee. He's also of the Labour Party. None of them have come out to say that their signatures were forged. In fact, the day she resumed, she seconded the motion of that was moved by that senator. So she broke history. She's a first-timer who was inaugurated. I was able to speak on the Senate. What I'm just saying here is that let us not personalize these issues. Let's not be like it is a case of Senator Akpabio versus Senator Natasha. They are colleagues, and the truth is that Senator Akpabio is first among equal. Well, and that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, people would see Senator Akpabio of controlling the brains of 108 senators. It is wrong to give that picture, because
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, Sanokologo. I mean, Sanokologo, we're rounding off now with you. I'm just wondering how much this could be, heavy on you, because you're the media consultant to the Senate President. This image, this public image that he has been represented in the last few months now, there are those who argue that the Senate President perhaps has a history of some of the things that Natasha is alleging. I wonder how you respond to them.
Well, it's the thing about Senator Akpabio is that his name always attracts news. I've sat with him before and we have had this discussion. I don't think it's heavy on me. It's a case of most of the misrepresentations that have been done in the cases that he has been involved in. It takes a couple of time for us to prove that these things are misconceptions. But more often than not, leaders also make mistakes. Akpabio has never told you he's a perfectionist. But what the gains that the Senate has made in these 2 years, 5 development commissions that have been inaugurated and they have been sworn into office, over 91 bills have been signed into law, 52 bills have been signed into law, 26 of them are executive bills, over 191 bills. Senator Yemi Aderomodu revealed all the statistics. I think what has been achieved in this Senate is a whole lot. I mean, a lot. And your station, we have been showing it, and you must also give us credit. We are paying for those adverts. It's costing us a whole lot of money on your station at the break for politics today. Showing the Senate presidents, reading out all the achievements. We chose to pay so that Nigerians can understand that it is a case of go and confirm, because there's Freedom of Information Act. If these things that are being said by the Senate president, it's true or false. So let's also look at the gains that have been made by the 10th Senate and not the negatives that you try to always put out there, which is more of emotions than sentiments. I beg for anybody to come to debunk any of those facts that I've presented, that Senator Natasha was not made the Senator of the Year, that Senator Natasha did not have free bills, that she did not have the Federal Medical Center, Ihima, Kogi State passed even while she was on suspension, that she did not contribute at least 5 times on the floor of the Senate. I mean, I'm just looking at facts. I'm not trying to be sentimental at this point. Well, she has resumed and she should just go back to her office and and move ahead while she concentrates on her court cases.
Well, so Sir Okolubo, all the issues are important, whether they are, development matters in terms of infrastructure or development matters in terms of, women representation and the issues that have to do with women. Speaking of which, we're hoping that these issues will be determined in court, including, the others that have arisen as a result of this, with reference to your principal saying that he would sue the ex-NDDC MD who also made similar accusation. We hope that they'll be determined such that your principal can clear his name. We must anchor at this point, and thank you very much, Sir Ken Okolubo.
Thank you for having me.
Consultant, Strategy and Communication, Office of the Senate President. So we're not done with this. We'll be speaking now with, one of the supporters of Senator Natasha Akpabio and rights activists. Kelly, you have this one.
Absolutely. Rights activist Aisha Yusufu joins us live on the program now from the nation's capital. Aisha, I imagine you've been listening to this conversation. Perhaps what is your exact reactions to the position of Sir Ken, plus the fact that I'm sure we have seen videos of you around Senator Natasha for quite some time now in this very dark moment. Walk us through what she's been saying to you behind the scenes.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So first of all, I just want to commend you for the fact that you took on the issue where citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria were being called hooligans and street urchins, even though they were questioned, because I was waiting. If that had not been done, the next question I was going to ask is that the behavior of Senate President Akpabio, does it not also look like that of a hooligan and a Senate urchin? So that would have been the question I was going to ask, but you took that on. For me, I would say, haven't listened, just listened to all the things that had been said. One of them, and where you saw the people of Kogi, Kogi Central Senatorial Zone coming over to Abuja and saying enough is enough. They needed their senator to resume. They have every right to do that because it is their country, it is their representative that they had sent in, and this person has been denied for 6 months. And don't forget also, right now they are saying, oh, it's not the Senate, it's the clerk of the National Assembly that sent in this message that said, oh, that they are not sure she's going to resume. No, she can't resume because there are certain court issues that are there. And the people, of course, decided that they were going to come. Perhaps for a Senate National Assembly that had said she should not resume, perhaps it's the fact that her constituents came on their own to say, look, we need to find out what's happening since the Senate is resumed. Maybe that's the reason why they decided to unseal, her office and go ahead to put it, publicly, to do a recording of that and put it in the news. So that's some of the things. But having said that, it's for me, before I even go into there were quite some interesting things that came out from the conversation, that I just listened to. And one of them where he talked about the fact that the issue of the sexual harassment in say court, I am not aware of that. And I wish you had taken it up to actually ask. The two issues that are currently in court that Senator Natasha with Godswill Akpabio is the one that the state have taken on. And the question that we all should be asking is that why is taxpayers' money being wasted on an issue that involves two senators? The Senate president should not drag the Senate into disrepute. If he has any issues with her, he should go ahead, and do it. Right now, we're having a situation whereby the state is being brought into it. Yesterday, on Monday, Senator Natasha was in court. I was in court with her. Yesterday, she was also in court. I was in court with her. And they were literally almost similar cases, federal government and her, on the issue of the Senate President Godswill Akpabio and former Governor Yahaya Bello. If they feel some of the things she has said, she had defamed them or whatever, let them go to court against her. Why are we dragging the whole institution and the whole state into it again? And on the other issue, of course, when as Judge Binta Inyako had said, the suspension was unconstitutional. The suspension should not have been. yes, she did not make a categorical statement, which was sad. And I think the judiciary needs to really sit down and take back its independence to be able to say, get back into your office. She didn't make that categorical statement. But one thing that is very interesting is also the fact that the Senate president had gone to appeal first. It wasn't the Senate. It was later that, the Senate also had gone to appeal that particular judgment. But one thing also that is quite ironic is the fact that the House of Representatives right now, they're sitting, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday they were in office, the National Assembly has resumed, but the Senate has not resumed. And from what has been reported, a message was sent out by is it the personal assistant to the chief of staff to the president of the Senate, sent out a message to all senators that they should not resume when they were supposed to resume. We're talking about taxpayers' money. If the Senate president cannot sit, cannot work, is not in a position to be able to work, why then do we have a deputy Senate president? Why is he the one, moving and continuing the holiday that they are in? These are germane questions, that we need to begin to ask 108 9 senators that we have. What are they doing? Or should I say 108 if we take out the Senate president? Why are they allowing one person to, on his own private and personal basis and issue, continue to control the Senate? And having said that is to say, I'm really wondering that the person who spoke last is taking credit for the hard work of Senator Natasha Akpabio, that even when she was not in office, the things that she has put in her bill has passed. She has done so much in the little time that she has been there. Why, if the Senate was the one that confers this on senators, why did they not confirm the same thing on the remaining 108 or 107 senators that are there? She is hardworking. She puts in everything. Even while she was on suspension, she was working so hard for her people, and that's why you saw the massive support. And they came all the way from Kogi State to come and ensure that their senator gets into office and not only resume, be there. Then the other issue, where they're saying there's also something quite interesting that was reported, yesterday in the media, where they are saying that from the source that they have, that, and I'm thinking this is from the Guardian, if I'm not mistaken, and part of it say, according to a source, the decision was arrived at during yesterday's leadership meeting at the Senate, where motion will be moved, and barring any changes, right? The minority leader of the Senate, Senator Abamoro, PDP Benue South, will move the motion for her to apologize, then seconded, and it will be taken. What does this mean? Is it that when they come back, they're going to sit down and ask her to apologize? Apologize for what?
And that brings me to the next question.
Let me just round up on this. Let me just quickly round up on this. What did Senator Natasha do that Senator Akpabio did not do? Scream, yell. He did what? Stand up when his seat was changed. So why? Is it because she's female, or is it because she's hardworking? Thank you. Come go ahead.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next question. Evidently, the reopening of her office has put her in high spirits. We saw that yesterday with her supporters as they celebrated. But going forward, are you worried, and what are you hearing about how she's going to henceforth relate, with her colleagues? Because since February, when this matter started, it has been a very divisive subject, not just amongst Nigerians, but also amongst the Senate members as well, when you hear the commentary that came through from them.
Amongst the Senate members, you understand, I would totally understand a good number of them, their position. This is a senator who, first of all, she's a first-time senator, and then second of all, she didn't come. They were not all inaugurated the same day. She came much later because she had to fight for her court case, and then she comes in and she's doing this many achievements. Not only this many achievements, she's also going on to do so many things for her people. So for every incompetent senator that you have, there are some that have been there for like probably 1999 or almost. that their people have not felt their impact. So they will feel a sense of threat, because if they come to say to their people, oh, you know, the Senate, we don't do this, but they're like, what about Senator Natasha that just came yesterday? Look at the many achievements that she has been able to do, and she's really now. And so that has also been one of the things that have put a lot of them, you know, on a place where they are not really liking her, if I might use it personally. There's also something, the cost of conversation that I've heard quite often that has been said by some of those senators who feel that, oh, is it because you have money, your husband is rich, you don't need this money, that's why you're not after whatever it is you're going to gain in terms of even the contracts or whatever. You're doing so much for your people. Sometimes you're even doing extra. So it's almost as if you're doing too much. And unfortunately in Nigeria, we've seen it again and again and again, where people who are really competent, who really put in the work, are the ones that are punished by those who, at the end of the day, they don't have the competence, neither the character or the capacity for them to be able to do that on. So you will understand that kind of behavior. I see where that comes from. But the most important thing is that her people are with her. And yesterday her people showed it, how much they are with her. And what we as Nigerians must do is that for every senator that we see doing the right thing, working, that they try to punish, let's not allow that happen. Let's also remember that the Senate has a history of punishing people who stand for the people who are there, you know, for Nigeria. I will give the example of Senator, I think it was Senator Nengi, that came out to tell us, like, hey, Nigerians, there is pardon that is going on. The Senate pardoned the budget and all of that. What happened? That particular Senate was suspended because he stood for what was right. And unfortunately, I now blame all of us as citizens. Yes. We allowed that suspension, you know, to happen. We didn't start by him, and this is now a reoccurrence. We've given the Senate, the National Assembly, an enabling environment for them to continue to punish senators who dare to. We have to round up. We have to round up our conversation with you in 60 seconds or less. The Women Reserved Bill, which is in the Constitution Review, I wonder if you think with what has played out with Senator Natasha now, what is going to happen to that bill? What is going to happen? This is what I have said about that particular bill. The reserve bill, for me, I think passing it is it's on the National Assembly for them to be able to do good, for them to be remembered, and for every member of the the 10th Assembly. I will say to them, there was once a 9th Assembly. There are a lot of people that didn't come back. There are many more that nobody even knew they were there. This is the opportunity for them to put their names in the books of history and give this reserve bill and ensure that it is not a place where now, oh, they're trying to get as much as they can, fielding in their own candidates, female candidates who can't do anything. That's so for them to say, oh, you see, we've given women a chance. So it is an opportunity for them to create a legacy for themselves. They are not doing women a favor. On the issue, it's more worrisome because with what has happened to Senator Natasha Akpabio, the question then is this what they're going to be doing to all women when they come in? Even this reserve bill, when women come in, are they going to be ganging up and, you know, suspending women when they try to fight for their rights in the Senate? All right. At the end of the day, one thing that I would say for us, for me, is that please, 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 the Senate is an institution that should not be desecrated, and the Senate president should be man enough to fight his battle himself and leave the Senate and the state away from it. If they have two senators fighting, it's none of my business. If he has issues with Senator Natasha Akpabio, they are both senators. Let them go and sort themselves out, whether in the courts. The state should not be brought into it. Neither should the institution be brought into it. Yes, thank you. I'm afraid. Thank you so much, Aisha Yusuf. I'm afraid we have to go now. I wish we had more time to squeeze in more questions. For the camp of the Senate president, they are asking perhaps for the evidence. Perhaps you can help us say that to Senator Natasha, that we're waiting for that evidence of sexual harassment because we are with her on that. We don't want to allow room for harassment. There are a flurry of cases in court. I was going to say that when I was putting my question through to Madam Yusufu, but there was no time. You know, the one she instituted, you know, following the Facebook post, the one by the wife of the Senate president. But it's an ongoing conversation. Thank you for being there at this time. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Toka.
Kelly Egiga from Lagos, Nigeria. Sunrise Daily is next. Good morning.